Jeff, first of all, great news from Crufts, of course, the £10,000 worth of vouchers being offered by Agria Pet Insurance and the Kennel Club for DNA health testing, but particularly for those breeders who maybe have not had a DNA test done as yet.
Yes, it's tremendous news, and we're very grateful for this initiative. Health checking, health testing has been part of the dog breeder psyche now for decades. And the really responsible breeders, and thankfully there are many responsible breeders out there, really take health checking seriously. And this new DNA technology is just the next stage in that natural progress of providing with better screening programs. So we're immensely grateful. And of course, members of the accredited breeder scheme represent responsible breeders, so we're happy to help them.
Now, you've got over 3,000 registered breeders,
yep.
But of course we are really concentrating on those breeders that maybe haven't had a DNA health test done yet.
Indeed, and part of this is to spread the word about how important it is to DNA test, particularly any dog that you're likely to breed from. Then any health information you can get about those dogs can help the breeders to minimise health problems in future generations. And so being able to encourage them to DNA test, which is the Rolls Royce of health screening, is a great advantage.
Now, we're talking about DNA testing, but of course also clinical screening
Indeed.
Comes into the equation.
Yeah.
But there is a difference, isn't there?
There is. As I say, if you look at the clinical screens that the Kennel Club have been running, the KCBFA schemes, they've been running now for about 40 years. And what the breeders do there is they try to use the clinical information to infer something about the genetics. But the clinical situation is somewhat remote from the genetics. And so that connection is slightly more tenuous. What DNA testing does, it actually allows us to come back to the genetics, the actual cause of some of these diseases, and therefore the result is much more black and white, and therefore far more informative for the breeder when they make their selections.
Now, here at Crufts, of course, Kennel Club Health Zone is very much a feature of the Kennel Club stand here at the show.
Yep.
And I think this also highlights the fact that, people probably tend to forget that the Kennel Club have been concerned about dogs' health and welfare for hundreds of years.
Indeed. In fact, the very reason one of the reasons the Kennel was established way back in 1873 was to do exactly that. It was to bring some sort of control to the whole area of registration exhibition, but also to use exhibition to improve health and welfare and breeds in general. So even from the late 19th century, health has been a fairly major priority, and breeders ever since have done their very best and used what was ever available at the time to try to breed better litters in future generations. And as the whole thing's progressed, those tests have become more and more sophisticated, and what we're left with now are these highly sophisticated tests, DNA tests for inherited disease, which truly allow breeders who use those tests to remove a problem within a couple of generations. And the classic example is the Irish setter. In five years, using DNA testing, the Irish setter population in the UK managed to remove a fairly serious disease which now no longer exists in the breed.
I mean, one or two breeds, of course, have been highlighted in recent publicity, and for whatever reason, I mean, clearly people have reacted as you probably would expect, but when you look at the publicity about those breeds more recently, I mean, the ones that have been highlighted, clearly there is inevitably going to be problems, but again, it only highlights probably a few breeds that have serious problems compared to the majority of the breeds who are fit and healthy and don't have any particular genetic problems at all.
Indeed, indeed, and a lot of these are breed specific. Some aren't. Some are across all dogs. I mean, there's all this myth that crossbreds are genetically healthier than purebreds. And in some areas that's not true, in other areas it is. But
by virtue of being crossbred, you'd straight away assume that, wouldn't you?
You would, but if you look at diseases like hip dysplasia, for example, hip dysplasia is a disease of physically large breeds.
And this is in particular German Shepherds, for example.
Crossbreds as well, though. Yeah. If you talk to veterinarians, they treat as many crossbreds with hind limb lameness, arthritis, as they do German Shepherds. Whereas some of these DNA tests look for what we call single gene diseases that result from just one particular mutant gene. They tend to be breed specific. But even in breeds where they're affected, breeds that are affected with these diseases, the prevalence is always less than 1%, or usually less than 1%. So although they are breed specific and are rarely seen in crossbred populations, the fact that the breeders can screen for them and then undergo very strict selection of who they should mate to, which dog and bitch should mate together, they can very quickly eradicate these things. And DNA tests just give them the confidence to make those sort of selections.
But if you look at humans, over a period of many, many thousands of years, we've all changed, haven't we?
We have.
And I guess that as far as dogs are concerned, particularly when it's very close to, if you like, particularly with dogs, of course, but they're very much part of a way of life, or part of a family. They're very much, if you like, they're a member of the family.
They are indeed.
You know, in that respect. I mean, even then, I mean, you still expect that over a period of time, as we've seen, breeds have actually developed, haven't they?
There is an issue, and one of the issues really stems from what we call exaggerated breeding. The idea that if something is seen to be good, then more of it is better. And that's where some of the breeds we've been alluding to, they've gone a little bit too far. And we do need to address some of these issues. But the only way we're going to address the issues is to persuade the breeders to kind of rein back and produce a different type of dog. And there are really two facets to that. One is the breeders, but I think importantly are the judges. And one of the big things the Kennel Club have been doing now for a number of years, although it has accelerated in recent times because of events, is really educating judges of their own responsibility and the part that they play in this whole process. Because there's no doubt that if judges change the type of dog they put up, breeders will very quickly breed that type of dog. So if we can get judges to put healthier specimens up in some of these breeds, then very quickly what will follow is that generally the breed will start to look like that. And actually, because of the immense power that breeders, selection power that these breeders have, they can change very quickly. In a couple or three generations, they can really change the way a dog looks.
And also, presumably, that means you have to rewrite the breeder standards manuals.
And indeed we do. And what we've been doing, and again, this has not just happened. The activity's accelerated in the last few months, but since 1987, the Kennel Club have routinely analysed and looked at breed standards, probably every 5 years, and tried to take out any suggestion that might lead to exaggerated breeding. We've been a lot more strict recently to try and remove any suggestion for exaggerated breeding, but it's been an ongoing process. And that's important, but actually it's the judges that interpret breed standards. So I come back to judging and showing is a very important part of progress, because it's with judges' decisions in the show ring that we accelerate change to a better type of dog at the end of the day.
But of course, ultimately, we're looking for a healthy, fit, and well-developed dog that is not only a beautiful dog, but also becomes a beautiful pet as well.
Yes, and thankfully, those are the principles that the vast majority of responsible breeders adopt in the UK, and that's what they're trying to do. My view is that most dogs, not all dogs, but most dog breeds were developed for a particular function. And I think when a judge judges those dogs, they should look at them and ask, can that dog perform the function it was intended to do? Even though that function may have long gone in history, it should still look as if it could do it. And I think if they adopt that particular principle, then they won't go far wrong.
What about designer dogs?
Designer dogs have their place. And again, I think some of the basis for designer dogs wouldn't stand scientific scrutiny. So the idea that Labradoodle won't shed, I don't think that's been proven scientifically. But that's the reason why many... You know, I think Labradoodles are quite attractive to look at. I bet they make great pets. So if you're looking for a decent pet, then maybe those sort of things. But what I don't like in designer dogs, again, are these extreme, the teacup chihuahua, for example. I see no sense in that. A dog has got to be a dog. And it's got to look as if it's a proper dog without any obvious health and welfare issues. And I think the designer dogs do take breeders into areas that I worry about in terms of health and welfare.
Because ultimately what we're looking for is a dog that you recognise as the dog you would expect it to be.
Yes, and sometimes people say, why choose a pedigree or purebred over a crossbred? Well, one of the advantages of purebred dogs is they are predictable. You know how big they're going to grow. You're going to know what kind of temperament they're going to have. So if you're interested in getting a dog with a particular set of characteristics, then purebreds probably are the best way to go. And having made that decision, then find responsible breeders who are doing all the things they need to do to ensure they're producing good puppies for that breed. But, you know, if all you're looking for is a pet who's going to warm your life, then a dog's a dog.
Absolutely. And all we want to do as well, of course, encourage those breeders who maybe haven't considered having a DNA test done.
Indeed, and this is a big part of our education program. I personally feel that change will come about through education, and we have a huge empire in a sense here. A lot of people are registering dogs with us, and we need to talk to as many of those as possible so that we can identify those that don't realise what they should be doing and persuade them to start doing things correctly. And initiatives like this and the development of DNA tests are real obvious examples of how we can take that message to a much broader church. People who are not necessarily Agria Club members, who may not come to Crufts to exhibit, but are still breeding dogs. We need to get the message wider, and these sort of initiatives help immensely. And of course, linking with a pet insurance company, they do touch most of those dog breeders.